Doctor Who, The Sontaran Games, by Jacqueline Rayner. Chapter 1. The room was briefly lit up as the Doctor left the machine. Then he shut the doors of his time machine behind him, and the room became dark again. The Doctor started to walk forward, but stumbled. He pulled a torch out of his pocket and switched it on. Pointing the beam at his feet, he looked to see what had tripped him up. There on the ground was a pair of thick rubber boots and what looked like a toolbox. He raised the torch, and a pale face screamed out of the blackness at him. The Doctor barked in surprise, sounded like a startled seal. The torch beam wobbled for a moment as he stepped backwards. Then he laughed in relief as he saw that this was no deadly alien. It was a young woman. She was wearing a swimming costume, which seemed strange to the Doctor, as it was obviously the middle of the night, but perhaps on this planet his blue suit, brown coat and trainers would look odd. "Where did you come from?" he asked the young woman. "There was no one around here a minute ago." But he remembered his manners and added, "I'm sorry I scared you." She didn't answer, just asked him the same question. "Where did you come from?" "Just now. By the planet Poodle," the Doctor replied. He waved his hand in the air to indicate somewhere a long way off. The light from the torch bounced around the room as he did so. "Ever been there?" She stared at him for a moment, and finally said, "No. Lovely beaches, but the sharks are deadly. As in, 3 meters tall guns, so quick getaway and end up here in your lovely, house." "You mean base?" the girl said. "Base? Like an army base? Base camp?" "No, this is base, the British Academy of Sporting Excellence." The Doctor screwed up his face. "British? Some on Earth?" "Yes," she replied, earning a great grin from the Doctor. "Great, I love Earth." Me too," said the young woman. She was giving the Doctor an odd look. Then again, he thought it might just be an effect of the torchlight. From somewhere to the left of the Doctor came the sound of a door opening. He swung the torch around, making the young man who'd entered fling up his hand to shield his eyes. The youth blinked a few times, then squinted ahead. "Oh, it's you, Emma," he said, sounding annoyed. "What was all that yelling and screaming about after what happened to Law and the others?" "I can look after myself, Sid," the girl replied. "Nothing's going to happen to me." "I don't expect Laura thought anything was going to happen to her either," the young man began. He stopped speaking when a pop of light came on. A soft yellow glow from an overhead bulb suddenly bathed the room. "Ah, well done," said Sid, turning to the Doctor. "You sorted it." The Doctor glanced over his shoulder, just in case the young man was speaking to someone else. He shrugged as he put the torch back in his pocket. "Wasn't me," he said. "You're not an electrician?" Sid looked at the toolbox by the Doctor's feet. "Nope," the Doctor grinned. "I'm the Doctor. And you're Sid, I take it. This is Emma." He turned to a girl. "I'd really like to know what happened to Laura and the others." Sid led the way out of the room. The Doctor had dodged questions about the large blue box that was now standing there. He didn't want to waste time trying to explain that the box was really his spaceship. He just wanted to hear Sid and Emma's tale. Base, he discovered, was a training ground for gifted athletes. All the young people who lived there were hoping to be chosen for the Global Games. This was a huge new sporting contest. Teams from every continent in the world would compete in track and field events, swimming, gymnastics, weightlifting and more. It seemed that anything that allowed one human being to prove himself best in a contest of speed, strength or skill was included. Sid was a javelin thrower and Emma, as the Doctor guessed, was a swimmer. Laura had been a swimmer too. "We're only supposed to train during the day," Sid told the Doctor. "A lot of people do some sneaky practice after the coaches have gone home, though anything to get on edge with the others. Only a few of us would be chosen to go to the game, so there's a lot of rivalry. You think that's why Laura had gone to the pool that night? A sad look crossed his face. It was only a week ago. Seems like forever. She was found dead the next morning in the water. Dead. He bit his lip. That's why I was worried when I heard Emma scream tonight. The doctor looked from one to the other. Why? Is someone bumping all the swimmers? Emma shook her head. He means because of the power cut. The first one that night, the night Laura died. And since then, every time the power's gone out, someone has died. Sid finished. 3 people so far, said Emma. Laura, a sprinter called Joe, and Andy, a disc thrower. The doctor stared at them amazed. You're telling me that these athletes are dropping like flies when the lights go out? Why isn't the place crawling with the police? Come to that, why haven't you all gone home? Sid wouldn't meet the doctor's eyes. Well, there's a lot at stake here, you know, he mumbled. They're going to be picking the team soon. The doctor raised his eyebrows. You're worried that an inquiry might stop you being chosen for some big-headed spoon race, so you're shushing up. 3 fishy deaths. Sid and Emma both looked at the floor. The doctor grinned. Well, at least there won't be anyone getting in my way. Well, I'll look into it then. Will there? Chapter 2. The coaches didn't live at base. Only the students stayed there full time, and they weren't supposed to leave the complex. Contact with family and friends were forbidden. The training was tough, and it wasn't unknown for athletes to drop out without warning. This was how the rest of the students had kept anyone from finding out about the deaths. Did you really think you'd get away with it? The doctor had asked in disgust. He looked down at the 3 lifeless bodies. They had been locked in disused change room, laid out on wooden benches. Those were people, real people who loved them. Are going to come looking in the end, said Grizzly's teeth. Their families will understand, he said. They know what a big deal the games are. The doctor opened his mouth, and the words stopped when he saw Emma's face. I didn't, she said. I didn't want to go along with it. I hadn't seen any of them. She pointed towards one of the benches, turning her face away. She wasn't looking at the body. It was still dressed in a red swimming costume. That's Laura. She gave a half smile. My biggest rival. I think I miss her. Maybe she wasn't such a bad person after all. The doctor held out a hand to her and led her back out to the changing room. Sid followed. You 2 stay here, he said, his voice much softer now. I'll be out in a minute. It was more like 20 minutes before the doctor joined Emma and Sid in the corridor. They weren't looking at each other. There was clearly no love lost between them. Emma was sitting cross-legged on the floor. She jumped up when the door opened, looking scared. Well, said Sid. What happened to them? They were electrocuted, the doctor said. Sid looked puzzled. Zap! Went the doctor, in case the youth hadn't understood. 1,000 volts. Zzz! Ow! Water and electricity don't mix. Don't take that toast from the bath, however peckish you're feeling. You mean it was something in the swimming pool? Emma asked. An accident? The doctor raised an eyebrow. Oh no, no accident. Found birds in the other 2 because there was no water to spread the current around. There's something very odd going on here. So, who do you think wants to win that much, eh? Don't they want to commit murder? Sid gaped at him. Murder? Could be. The young man shrugged his shoulders. Now you mention it, it wouldn't really be a big surprise, so what were you doing roaming around in that night, Emma? Emma gasped. Me? What about you? Anyway, let's make sense at all. All the victims did different sports. They all been swimmers. You might be onto something, but they weren't. The doctor smiled. Good point. That means the answer is likely to be something a lot more interesting. What was that noise? Sid asked. All 3 went quiet, trying to listen. There was a heavy thumping sound, and that seemed to be getting nearer and nearer and nearer. Do you have a marching band? I might be getting in some late marching practice, the doctor whimpered. Sid shook his head. They crept down the corridor and peered around the corner. Emma gasped in horror. 4 short, burly figures were trooping towards them. Each wore a dark blue uniform that seemed to be something between a spacesuit and armour. They were large, rounded helmets on top. 2 carried long, thin devices in their hands. The other 2 held weapons that looked like compact machine guns. The doctor knew that they were all deadly. He flung himself back round the corner, pulling Emma and Sid with him. I said the answer was likely to be interesting, he said. And that's what I call interesting. What are they? Sid said. Not took a deep breath. Sontarans, he said. Chapter 3. The doctor waited until the Sontarans had gone past. Then he let Sid and Emma out from their hiding place. We've got to get people out of here, he told the nervous pair. Sontarans are ruthless and deadly, and there's no one safe if they're around. But what are they? Said Sid, his eyes wide. The doctor explained quietly as they crept away. They're warriors from the planet Sontar, he said. They only live for battle, and it's almost impossible to defeat them in combat. They only have one weakness, a little hole at the back of their neck called a pelvic vent. If you hit there, you'll fall over. That sounds like good advice, said Sid. It's not, the doctor said. Good advice is to keep as far away from them as possible. But what are they doing here? Asked Emma. The doctor shrugged. It's war. Must have moved over from here. Every 300 years it heads over a solar system and Earth becomes a key battle site. He sighed. It's a war. That'll never end. The Sontarans have been fighting the Rutans forever. And that's what it seems like. The Rutans? Said Emma. Big green, shape-changing, amphiphorous blobs. Hold on a second, said Sid. Amphiphor what? They both live on land and in water like frogs, and they're deadly warriors, not like frogs. Well, not like most frogs. He paused for a second, thoughtful. The commons room is just down there, Sid said. Anyone who's not in bed yet will be in there, I'll warn you though. They'll think this is a plot to rob them, or a place in the games. No one trusts anyone around here. There were 2 young women and 1 man in the common room. Sid introduced Carl and Jess, both tall, good-looking and black. Just like Sid, Carl was a sprinter and Jess was a long jumper. The third person was a petty red-headed gymnast called Holly. All three seemed on edge. The first thing they wanted to know was what had happened when the lights went out. They were expecting bad news, but not news the doctor gave them. They listened, frowning, when the doctor explained about the Sontarans. He wasn't surprised to find they didn't believe him. It's a trick, Jess said. Just as Sid had predicted. You want us to leave base so we lose our chance to make the teams? No, said the doctor calmly. I want you to leave base so you gain a chance to live. If you stay here, you'll be in giant danger. Great danger. From these Sontarans? She sneered. Clearly not convinced by anything he said. Sontarans? That was Emma. We never saw them. We saw them, Sid and me. I agree with the doctor, and we have to get out of here. But if I don't get a good night's sleep, I won't be able to run well in the morning, Carl said. Is someone paying you to upset my training? The doctor slapped his hand against his forehead. The only running you'll be doing is running away, he told the young man. This is silly. Don't you trust anyone? Sid laughed grimly. You ain't seen nothing yet, Doctor. Notice that lot. All do different sports. You won't get 2 teammates in the same room and then stab each other in the back before they can say, Paula Radcliffe. The doctor shook his head, amazed. How'd you ever manage to work together this long to cover up these murders? That was really a triumph of selfishness, of spite. Sid shrugged. He turned to the others. Look, it's not a trick, right? These monsters have got guns. In the end, Carl, Holly, and even Jess agreed to go with the doctor. But if there's no sign of these alien things, I'm coming straight back, said Jess grumpily. The 6 of them made their way upstairs towards the bedrooms. "I could set off the fire alarm," said Holly. "That would wake everyone up, and then give them the reason to get out. Then you wouldn't have to explain all the monsters." "Nah," said Jess. "Leave them there. The monsters get them all. I get a place in the games." The doctor ignored Jess, but gave Holly a big smile. "The fire alarm's a good idea, but there could be a panic, people running here and there and all over the place. Then Sontarans might get a bit trigger happy. We don't really want that." They were still trying to come up with a plan when they reached the upper floor, but it turned out that they didn't need one. They were too late. "Are they aliens?" Just gasped Jess, sorry. No longer stroppy, she stared as 2 Sontarans headed a crowd of sleepy, scared people down the corridor at gunpoint. "Oh, yes," said the doctor. He took a deep breath and pointed away from the Sontarans. "Right, you 5, that way, quick and quiet as you can. Use the doors, windows, cat flaps, anything. Just get out of here and don't come back." "But what about you?" asked Emma. He shrugged. "Someone's got to get the rest of these students out. That's my job." She didn't look happy as he kept on. "I mean, that's my job. No pay, no sick days, no desk with my name on it. But that's what I do. Fight monsters, rescue people." "I hear you, man," said Cole. "I'm out of here." The tall sprinter hurried off even. His trainer was making no noise as he ran. Jess, Holly and Sid followed with the last glance at the doctor. Emma went too. There was a door at the end of a corridor leading to a fire escape. Carl pushed down the metal bar that was supposed to open it. Nothing happened. "It can't be locked," Jess said, a note of fear in her voice. "You're not allowed to lock fire exits. It's the law." She rattled the metal bar as Sid came forward to have a go. His arm muscles stood out as he pushed, but the door just wouldn't open. The doctor had started to follow the Sontarans as he returned to the athletes when he heard the panic at the door. He pulled a slim metal tube from his pocket as he joined them. "It's not a screwdriver," he told the frantic 5. "Don't worry, this will get you out." He twisted the end of his sonic and the tip began to glow blue. He waved it across the fire door. Nothing happened. "Right," said the doctor. "Everyone, back downstairs." They hurried back the way they came. Then Carl led the way to the building's main door. It wouldn't open, even with a solid screwdriver. "We got to get out," yelled Jess. The others tried to shush her, but they were too upset. She ran to the common room and picked up a chair. "No!" cried Emma, realising what Jess planned to do. "Sontarans are here to crash." It was too late. Jess raised the chair above her head and threw it as hard as she could at the window. Everyone held their breath. The chair bounced off the window. The doctor sighed. "I'm sorry," he said. "Looks like the Sontarans have sealed the building." "You mean," Holly began. Emma finished the sentence for her. "We're trapped," she said. Chapter 4. Everyone was quiet for a few moments as this sank in. Then the doctor gave a yelp. "No, we're not trapped." He led the way out of the common room. "Now, I don't normally do this, but all you've got to promise not to touch anything. We're going to my ship." "Your ship?" Emma said. "You mean your spaceship?" "Spaceship, timeship, whatever you want to call it." A sad look crossed his face. "I met some good people not too long ago. The Sontaran killed them. I don't want this to happen again. Not if I can help it. I'm getting you out of here." They were halfway to the TARDIS when everything went dark. Holly gasped. "The power's off again." There was a silence. The doctor guessed that all the students were thinking the same thing. After a few moments, Sid put the thought into words. "Every time there's been a power cut, someone's died." "Not every time," said Emma. "No one died earlier tonight when the power went off, did they?" "Perhaps we just haven't found the body yet," said Jess, her voice sounding scared. "Perhaps it's thrown in a swimming pool somewhere, like Laura, or shoved Under the stairs like Andy, perhaps. We'll go around the corner and trip over it. Holly stumbled and gave a shriek. The body! She cried. It's the body! The doctor whipped his torch from his pocket and turned it on. The light showed what Holly had fallen over. It wasn't a body. It was a pair of chunky rubber boots. I fell over these earlier, the doctor told him. This means we're right by the TARDIS. He waved the torch beam round, looking for a ship. It lit up the helmeted head of the Sontaran standing right in front of him. There was a large black gun in his hand that was pointing straight at the doctor. When the Sontaran flung up his other hand to cover his eye slots in his helmet. The doctor yelled in delight. It's dazzled, he cried. As long as I shine the torch in his eyes, he can't see us. He jumped to one side as the alien fired a shot towards his voice. He didn't let the torch beam waver through. The doctor thrust a hand in his pocket and pulled out the TARDIS key. He threw it back over his shoulder, yelling, Catch! Got it! Jess called back. Good girl. Now there's a big blue box just over there. You won't be able to see it. It's just blue in the dark. But trust me, let everyone in and wait for me. A laser beam from Sontaran's gun briefly lit up the TARDIS. There you go, cried the doctor as he hopped out of the way again. He could hear the footsteps as Jess hurried forward. Where's the keyhole? She cried. Oh wait, hear it. There was a huge flash. Pale green light flared around the TARDIS. Holly and Emma screamed. Sid and Cole yelled, but there was no sound from Jess. They all blinked as the lights came on, and then they saw Jess. She was lying on the floor even, sorry. I'm going to say that again. They all blinked as the lights came back on, and they saw Jess. She was lying on the floor by the TARDIS. A melted, twisted scrap of metal in her hand was all that remained of the key. Her eyes were open, but saw nothing. She was dead. Chapter 5. There was no time to mourn Jess. When the lights turned back on, the Sontaran was able to see again. His gun was sturdy now, pointing straight at the doctor. You will come with me, the alien said, his voice deep and harsh. Ah, said the doctor. The thing is, you see, I don't really want to do that. But you will die. The monster's weapon, 3-fingered hands, gripped the weapon tighter. Ah, said the doctor again. I don't really want to do that either. He was staring straight at the Sontaran. He hoped that if he kept his eye contact, the alien would forget that the students behind it. They were all frozen to the spot, none of them daring to move. Did you might not want to do that if you know who I was, he continued. I'm not one of the sports students. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a toolbox still lying next to the tires. Not quite saying I don't like sports, of course. Darts now, quite keen on darts. Just a little bit of javelins they are. He saw javelin thrower Sid's head jerked up at that. Except that is incredible. I'm trying to throw him a long way, he went on. You're trying to hit a small target. Stop your chatter, shouted the Sontaran, still aiming the gun at the doctor. If you do not belong to this place, you will tell me why you are here. Well, I've come to fix things, said the doctor. Come to fix problems using my trusty toolbox. Everyone should have a toolbox full of handy tools, chisels, screwdrivers, just like that little darts. The Sontaran kept staring at the doctor, his gun still pointing towards him, but then, very slowly, it toppled forward like a felled tree. The screwdriver was sticking out of the back of his neck. Ha ha! The doctor punched the air and ran forward to shake his hand. Well done, you! You shouldn't be an athlete, you should be a spy. You're good at that, working out coded messages. Sid looked a bit bashful. I shouldn't have thought of it myself, he said. You told us before about the Sontaran's weak spot and the toolbox was just sitting there. Is it dead? Asked Ollie, looking down at the prone alien. The doctor shook his head. Just knocked out, he said. So you better make tracks before it comes around. All 5 of them turned to the TARDIS. Jess is dead though, said Emma. She was staring at the girl who lay in front of her ship's doors. Massive electric shock, just like the others, said the doctor, kneeling down beside the body. He looked at the melted key in Jesse's hand and pulled a face. Can we get into your ship without the key? Asked Girl. The doctor winced his nose. I can sort that out. I'm more worried about the TARDIS. It's still packing a charge though. Surely Jess would have earthed it, Cole said. The doctor was already putting on heavy rubber boots. He added a pair of thick, insulated gloves that were poking out of the toolbox. Proper electrician's gear, he commented. Proper safe and sorry. Better safe than sorry. He then took a couple of steps towards the TARDIS. A gloved hand outstretched, a bright green spark leapt from the ship, arcing through the air towards him. The doctor backed off. If I hadn't had these on, he said, peeling off the rubber gloves, one thing at a time, they would have been toasted. Doctor on the menu. So, we can't get out of your ship, Sid said. The doctor shook his head. No, we're stuck here with the Sontarans.